In the year 610 CE, on a rocky hillside just outside the city of Mecca, a man was alone in a cave. He had been coming to this cave for years, not for shelter, not to hide, but to think, to reflect, to sit in silence with questions that the world around him seemed unable to answer. His name was Mohammed. He was 40 years old, a merchant from one of Arabia's most prominent tribes. He had a wife, children, and a reputation for honesty that was known across the region. He had no army, no political office, no formal education. And on that night in the cave, something happened that would, within a single century, change the course of human civilization. To understand Islam, you first have to understand the world it was born into. In the 6th century CE, the Arabian Peninsula was a land of extreme contrasts. Vast deserts, competing tribal systems, no centralized government, no single ruling power. The tribes of Arabia governed themselves through a system of clan loyalty and blood obligation. Honor and revenge were the operating currency. Alliances shifted. Conflicts were settled by sword or by negotiation between elders. At the heart of this world stood one city above all others: Mecca. Mecca was not just a trading hub, though it was certainly that, sitting at the crossroads of trade routes connecting Arabia, Africa, Persia, and the Mediterranean. It was also a religious center. At its heart stood the Kaaba, an ancient structure that the Arabs venerated as a sacred site. By the 6th century, the Kaaba housed over 360 idols representing the deities of the various tribes of Arabia. This was the world into which Muhammad was born, a world rich in commerce and culture, but also fractured by tribalism, inequality, and a spiritual landscape that, to at least one man, felt deeply incomplete. Muhammad ibn Abdullah was born in Mecca around 570 CE, a year that Islamic tradition remembers as the Year of the Elephant. The name comes from an event that occurred that same year. Abraha, a powerful military commander from the Aksumite Empire in present-day Ethiopia, led an army, including war elephants, toward Mecca, reportedly intending to destroy the Kaaba. His campaign failed, and the event became so significant that the Arabs named the entire year after it. Muhammad's father, Abdullah, died either shortly before or shortly after his birth. His mother, Amina, raised him alone until her own death when Muhammad was just 6 years old. He was taken in first by his grandfather, Abd el-Muttalib, a respected elder of the Quraysh tribe. When Abd el-Muttalib died, his uncle, Abu Talib, assumed responsibility for the boy. By any measure, Muhammad's early life was defined by loss. He entered adulthood as an orphan, without inherited wealth, without a father's name to open doors for him. He had only his character, and as it turned out, that would prove to be enough. As a young man, Muhammad accompanied his uncle on trade journeys across Arabia and into Syria. It was an education no school could have provided, exposure to different peoples, religions, and ways of organizing society. He worked as a merchant, and he built a reputation that was rare in a world where deception in trade was commonplace. He was known throughout Mecca by 2 titles: Al-Amin, meaning the trustworthy, and Al-Sadiq, meaning the truthful. At the age of 25, Muhammad was hired as a trade agent by a wealthy businesswoman named Khadija bint Khuwailid, a widow who ran one of Mecca's most successful trading operations. When the journey was complete, she sent him a marriage proposal. They married in 595 CE. Muhammad was 25. Khadija was 40. The marriage lasted until her death, and by every historical account, it was a partnership of genuine depth and mutual respect. Muhammad did not marry anyone else during her lifetime. As the years passed, something drew Muhammad away from the comfort of that life. He began making regular journeys to a cave in the mountain of Jabal al-Nur, the mountain of light, just outside Mecca. There he would spend days, sometimes weeks, in prayer and reflection, returning home for supplies before going back. He was searching for something, and in 610 CE, when he was 40 years old, he found it. It was during the month of Ramadan in 610 CE. Muhammad was in the cave of Hira when, according to Islamic tradition, the angel Gabriel, appeared to him and spoke a single word, Iqra, read. Muhammad, who could not read or write, replied that he did not know how. The command came again, and then, according to the account preserved across centuries of Islamic scholarship, came the first verses of what would become the Quran, the sacred text of Islam. Muhammad ran home trembling and told Khadija everything. Her response would prove historically significant. She did not doubt him. She did not dismiss him. She wrapped a cloak around his shaking shoulders and told him God would not disgrace a man of his character. Khadija became the first person to accept Islam. The first Muslim in history was not a king, not a warrior, not a scholar. She was a businesswoman who had known Muhammad longer and more closely than anyone else, and who chose, on the basis of that knowledge, to believe him. For the next 3 years, Muhammad received revelations privately. In 613 CE, he began preaching publicly, proclaiming that there was only one God, Allah, and that he was his messenger. The tone Muhammad carried was not welcome to everyone. Mecca's ruling Quraysh tribe had built its wealth and power on the existing religious system. The Kaaba, with its 360 idols, drew pilgrims and traders from across Arabia. A message declaring all those idols worthless, declaring that only one God existed and that all people were equal before him, regardless of tribe or social standing, was a direct threat to the economic and political order. The persecution began slowly and grew severe. Muhammad's followers, many of them from the lower rungs of Meccan society, including enslaved people, were beaten, tortured, and driven from their livelihoods. In 615 CE, Muhammad sent a group of his most vulnerable followers to seek refuge in Abyssinia, present-day Ethiopia, under the protection of its Christian king, the Negus. In 619 CE came what Islamic tradition calls the Year of Sorrow. Within weeks of each other, 2 of the pillars of Muhammad's life died, his wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib, who had protected him politically within Mecca's tribal structure. Without Abu Talib's protection, Muhammad's position in the city became untenable. In 622 CE, Muhammad and his followers made the journey that would divide Islamic history into 2 eras. They migrated north, 340 kilometers, to the city of Yathrib, later renamed Medina, meaning the city of the Prophet. This migration is called the Hijra. It is considered so foundational to Islam that the Islamic calendar begins at this point. Year 1 of the Islamic calendar is not the year of Muhammad's birth and not the year of the first revelation. It is 622 CE, the year the community moved. In Medina, Muhammad established something unprecedented in Arabia, a written political charter known as the Constitution of Medina, which defined the rights and obligations of all communities in the city, Muslim, Jewish, and pagan alike. It is considered one of the world's earliest documented constitutional agreements. The years in Medina were not peaceful. The Quraysh of Mecca did not accept Muhammad's migration as the end of their conflict. Several major battles were fought between 624 and 627 CE, most notably the Battle of Badr in 624, where Muhammad's forces achieved a decisive victory against a much larger Quraysh army, a turning point that consolidated the Muslim community's strength and credibility. In 628 CE, Muhammad negotiated a truce with Mecca, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, a 10-year agreement that, among other terms, allowed Muslims to perform pilgrimage to Mecca the following year. In 630 CE, the Quraysh violated the terms of the treaty. Muhammad marched on Mecca with an army of 10,000. The city offered almost no resistance. He entered largely without bloodshed, declared a general amnesty for the Quraysh, and ordered the idols removed from the Kaaba. In a single generation, the city that had driven him out had become the spiritual center of a new world order. Muhammad died on the 8th of June, 632 CE, in Medina. He was 63 years old. At the time of his death, the Arabian Peninsula had been largely unified under Islam for the first time in its history. Within 100 years of that day in the cave on Jabal al-Nur, Islam had spread from the Iberian Peninsula in the west to the borders of China in the east, one of the most rapid transformations in recorded human history. Today, Islam is the faith of approximately 2 billion people across every continent on Earth. It is the world's second largest religion and its fastest growing. And it all began with a man in a cave, an orphan from a desert city known for nothing but his honesty, who came down from that mountain one night in 610 CE, carrying a message he had not sought, and spent the remaining 22 years of his life delivering it to a world that would never be the same. If you want to go deeper, the next video in this series covers the rightly guided caliphs, the 4 leaders who followed Muhammad and presided over Islam's first great expansion. Subscribe so you do not miss it.